Hello everyone, this is your friend Ed and I am back with a new fanfic part 2. The fanfic title is What If Hinata's Biggest Mistake Became Her Greatest Blessing part 2. I hope you enjoy this fanfic, and if you enjoy this, so don't forget to subscribe my channel. Now let's start the fanfic. Okay Sakura, you can do this. Sakura had been standing outside the entrance of the cafeteria for 10 minutes, scared out of her mind and hoping the great gods in the sky would come down before her and strike her with luck. Because after what happened last week, her usual nerves of steel were shattered. Her chest fluttered as she recalled the night at the falling leaf. Sasuke hadn't said a word to her before he so demandingly and almost territorially took her hand and rushed her out from the crowd, his breathing ear. Galur, frustration staining his face. Once away from everyone, he remained silent and she was the first to speak. "What the hell are you doing?" she yelled, shocked by his actions. The Uchiha looked at her and squeezed her hand tighter. He opened his mouth to speak but couldn't find the right words. He had never been good at talking to people, he always came off too harsh. "Don't go over there anymore," was the only thing he managed to say. "Huh," she said, squinting her eyes confusingly at him. "What's that supposed to mean?" Sasuke remained quiet and looked away from her gaze but continued to squeeze her hand tightly. Sakura grew impatient and tears began to collect in her eyes. She was tired of the way he was treating her. She wasn't just some puppet he could string along like nothing. "Look," she stated angrily, "if you have nothing to say to me, then let me go, Sasuke." She tried to remove her hand from his grasp but he didn't budge. Sasuke faced her again, but this time stared at her intensely, as if he figured out what he was going to do. This only confused Sakura even more and she tried once again to move away. Then something happened that the Pinkett would never forget. Sasuke pulled her towards him and before she could react, crashed his lips firmly against hers. The force caused Sakura to stumble backwards with Sasuke in suit, but she was able to regain her balance. Time seemed to freeze at that very moment. Her emerald eyes widened at the realization of the event that was currently taking place. Sasuke, freaking Uchiha, the one and only guy she had ever loved in her entire life, was kissing her. Was this even real? Sakura shifted in his grasp, trying to test the reality of the situation but only causing Sasuke to tighten his grip even more around her and deepen the kiss. It was as if he was scared she was going to run away or something. Dream or not, Sakura was overwhelmed with emotion, who knew that with just a kiss all her worries could just fly away. Her eyes slowly fluttered shut as she relaxed into the kiss, her tense shoulders drooped, her clenched fists really aced and moved to his chest. And before this magical moment could end, she moved her lips gently against his. The two stood there in each other's embrace for what felt like hours, their lips molding perfectly together in union. They didn't care about where they were or who was watching, all that mattered was each other. They only stopped when they were alerted by a loud familiar shriek that boomed throughout the club and when security came whooshing by them. He then took her by the hand and they both rushed to the scene of the fight, not saying a word about what took place. After that event, Sakura began to avoid Sasuke out of fear that he would say it was a mistake or that what happened that night didn't mean anything. She even made Naruto drive him to school now that his car was fixed. But the avoiding had become so obvious that her friends started to take notice and she didn't want anyone else to know what happened until she was fully sure herself. So now here she was trying to face her fears and talk to Sasuke before everyone arrived for lunch. Looking around, making sure the coast was clear, she took one more sneaky peek at her unaware prey. Sasuke sat at their usual lunch table staring out the window in deep thought without a care in the world. The Pinkett couldn't help but gawk dreamingly at him as she clinged onto the nearby wall for support. "Ah, I'm not even near him yet and he's already got me lightheaded," she said whimsically. Her eyes became saucers and she quickly slapped her hand over her mouth, realizing she said that statement out loud. The daydreaming Uchiha slowly shifted his attention from the window to her, raising an eyebrow with a "hn" sound escaping his lips. Sakura's face turned as pink as her hair. "Oh god, he heard you, wow, real smooth Sakura, real smooth, curse my big mouth," she reprimanded. The two stared at each other, neither of them daring to look away. Now that she had caught his attention, she had no choice but to go up to him. "It's now or never. Come on, you got this, you're not in high school anymore, you're grown woman, damn it." Sakura nodded to herself and began an unintentional robot march towards Sasuke, his gaze following her the whole way there. She shakily plopped down in the seat across from him and her eyes firmly glued to the table. Hi, was the only thing she managed to squeak out. Sasuke stared at Sakura's meek state without a stitch of emotion. Hi yourself, he snapped back at her, catching her attention. Sakura's head instantly shot up to meet his gaze and was shocked to see that the Uchiha was fuming. Was he mad at her? His whole demeanor left a bad taste in Sakura's mouth, so she wasted no time bringing up the awkward subject. Look, about the other night, she quickly blurted out. Sasuke raised a hand to stop her from saying any more. Stop, this is not the place to talk about this kinda stew. We'll talk when we're alone, he said a bit harshly, or will that make you uncomfortable too? Sakura couldn't believe the attitude he was giving her. What was going through his head right now? Did that night at the club mean nothing to him? What are you talking about? She snapped at him. All I wanted to know is why did yo? Sasuke gave her a glare that screamed shut up, I said another time. Fine, whatever. She barked back at him, crossing her arms and swallowing back her tears. And aren't we alone right now? Sasuke pointed to a table in the far back corner where a very depressed Naruto Uzumaki sat, his head resting on the table. Sakura's eyes widened at the sight. He's been that way ever since that night, Sasuke stated. Sakura looked sadly at the blonde. He looked broken, bags hung under his eyes from loss of sleep, his hair looked wild from lack of grooming, and she could see what looked like a 5 o'clock shadow forming along his jawline. He was a shell of his usually bright sunny self. Oh god, not him too, Sakura mumbled under her breath. Sasuke turned towards her, intrigued by her comment. What do you mean by him too? He questioned. Hinata's been acting the same way, she answered quietly. Naruto lifted his head from his arms at the sound of Hinata's name. She has been out of it for days, walking into walls, dropping plates. I heard the manager at our job had to make her take a few days off, she was performing so bad, Sakura sighed sadly at the thought of the Hugas's sad state. Poor girl. Naruto's head plopped back down onto the table with a thunk, alerting the duo. Sakura got up from her seat and walked over to him quickly. Naruto, Sakura called to him, concerned. But Naruto didn't respond. Sakura placed a hand to his back in a comforting manner. Hey, don't be that way, talk to us, what's going on him? Naruto shifted his body away from her. I don't want to talk, Sakura-chan. Quote. Sakura sighed and walked around the table so that she was right in front of him. I already wheedled the story out of Hinata. I just want to know what was going on in your mind at the moment. You know, get your perspective. Sakura heard him sigh and knew she had broken him. I just wanted to protect her. Naruto blurted out boldly, not raising his head from the table. I didn't mean for all this to happen. Sakura leaned over the table so that she was close enough to properly hear what he was saying, but protect her. From what though, Naruto? She didn't seem like she was in any trouble. In fact, none of us were, she said loudly and looking back at Sasuke. Naruto slowly raised his head and Sakura was able to see just how worked up he was about this situation. Okay, maybe not you guys, but she was. There was some piece of shit guy with fluffy white hair who was after her, and I mean really after her. I caught him looking at her chest a few times, Naruto said pleadingly. Seriously. He looked like if he had any opportunity to be alone with Hinata he was gonna rip her clothes off and. Okay, I get it, he looked like a full-on pervert. Now go on, Sakura said, growing impatient. There was no way in hell I was gonna let that clown wrap his nasty pasty fingers around my sweet little Hinata. So I did what any logical friend would do and tried to get her the hell out of there, Naruto said loudly, getting riled up recalling the events. But then Mr. Casper the friendly ghost got in my way. So then you beat him up? Sakura asked, confused. You bet your I did, and I would have kept pummeling that bastard over and over again until he was blind. That way I would know for sure he wouldn't look at Hinata like that ever again. But security broke us up, Naruto yelled. Sakura put a hand to her head in frustration and breathed out. The amount of times you've managed to get into fights baffles me. Can't you just sit down and have a regular conversation? Quote. I was mad, Sakura-chan, unbelievably, ridiculously mad, and I'm not even sure if it was just because of that floppy-headed shit, Naruto argued, slumping in his seat. I think I was mad at Hinata too, and if you asked me why, I couldn't tell you even today. Quote, let me ask you this, Dobi, do you have a thing for Hinata or what? Sasuke asked, joining the two at the table. Naruto's mouth hung open at Sasuke's question. He was instantly taken back to night at the club when Hinata asked him a similar question. Tell me something, Naruto-kun, are you really doing this as a concerned friend or as something else? Naruto fisted his hair in frustration. I don't know. Hinata has always been someone very special to me. But, to think about her that way feels wrong, and sorta right all at the same time. It's so weird. Sasuke sighed in annoyance. You're really oblivious, you know that. Sasuke leaned in close to Naruto, startling him. Well, you better figure it out then, and fast, he said loudly and plainly. Naruto blinked several times in confusion. I just need some time, alright. All I can think about right now is what an hole I was to her. I'm such an idiot. Naruto groaned, griping his hair even tighter. I need to apologize. Well, apologize then, Ino yelled, entering the cafeteria with their group and a ton of other students. She happily skipped over to the trio with a bento bag carefully clutched at her side. Hey, why wasn't I invited to this meeting? I happen to care a great deal about Naruto and Bunny too, she whined. Soon all their friends caught up and began crowding around the table. I agree with Ino-san, whatever you did to my cousin, you need to apologize immediately, and when you do, tell her to call her father. He hasn't been able to get in contact with her and he's driving me mad, Neji stated. Naruto looked up at Neji. Don't you think I tried? She won't pick up her phone for me either, and she's been avoiding me like I'm some kinda disease or something. Naruto slammed his fist on the table. I ate up badly. Sakura rubbed Naruto's back in an effort to calm him down. Relax, Naruto. Look, just go over her house and apologize to her face. Sakura glanced up at Sasuke. It's better to say what's on your mind instead of keeping it all built up, and I bet she will appreciate that you were brave enough to say it in person, she said to Naruto, but her eyes never leaving Sasuke's. Sasuke scoffed. She's right, Dobi. Tell her to stop avoiding you and talk it out, Sasuke said, looking back at Sakura with equal intensity. Naruto looked back and forth between Sasuke and Sakura. Thanks guys, am I missing something here? He questioned. No, the duo said in union, quickly looking away from each other. Liars, but I'll investigate that later. Right now let's get back to Hinata. Maybe you should bring her a GI. For to really emphasize the I'm sorry, Tenten said, taking a seat next to Naruto. Ino instantly perked up. Ooh, I know you can get her flowers from my shop. I'll give you 50% off, she sang, trying to persuade him. Fine, Naruto finally said, causing Ino to jump up and down in excitement. I just hope she can forgive me, Tedbio. Hinata shifted under her heated covers, trying to fight the cold nipping at her feet. With no job to go to, she had been spending her days off inside, curled up on her couch watching TV. Call it crazy, but she was scared to go outside. She feared that she would run into another one of her friends and they would bother her about the events that took place that horrid night. Or worse, she would run into the very man she had been trying to avoid the most. A deep stinging pain attacked her heart. When she even attempted to recall the events of that night, there was no way she was ready to discuss it with any more people yet. Talking about it with Sakura stressed her out enough. She was pretty sure her inbox was full on her phone from all of the messages she had been receiving. She hadn't dared to check any of them. Hinata couldn't help but laugh at the irony. Just when she thought she had repaired her relationships with everyone, after all these years, she was back in the same situation again. Hinata cursed herself repeatedly. She should have stuck to her gut in the beginning and just avoided him, instead of getting hurt over and over again like this. Was love really like this, so sad and painful? Or was she just like her father had always called her? Weak. Hinata pulled her knees into her chest. If only there was something to distract herself, she couldn't stand sitting here and soaking in her own depression. Just then the doorbell rang, startling her. She quietly hopped to her feet and tiptoed to the door to peek and see who it was. She said a silent prayer that it wouldn't be him standing out there. Standing on her toes, she squinted her eyes and tried to make out who it was through the peek hole. To her surprise, it wasn't anyone she expected. Hinata slowly unlocked and shakily opened the door. Ah. Tonari-kun, what are you doing here? She hadn't seen him since the night he dropped her off, but then again she hadn't been to school in the past few days. Tonari stood bashfully in her doorway, swaying back and forth on his heels. He appeared nervous for some reason. He wore a green scarf, a close-fitting brown jacket along with some black pants and shoes. He cleared his throat. Ahem. Hello Hinata-san, you look comfortable. Hinata looked down at her clothes and flushed. She was still wearing her PJs and bunny slippers. Oh my. Do you mind giving me a second? I'll be right back, she blurted out emberingly. Tonari didn't even get a chance to reply before she quickly slammed the door and rushed to her room to change. What did he want? Was he gonna bug her about the other night? Hinata struggled to put on her coffee-colored sweater and wobbled to the front door. Whatever it was, she hoped she could handle it. She took a deep breath before she opened the door again. She instantly felt bad for leaving him out there when she saw him rubbing his hands together to stay warm. Please see, come in, sorry about that, she said, waving a hand directing him inside. Tonari shook his head and followed her. His eyes wandered around the apartment in awe as he took in its beauty. Wow, may I say Hinata-san, your apartment is quite the attraction. I haven't seen a dwelling this lovely. Why before? Thank you. I'm glad you like it, she said, taking his coat. Can I get you some tea? It was pretty cold out there, she said, still feeling guilty. Tonari waved a hand at her kind gesture. No, please don't trouble yourself. I actually didn't plan on staying long. He then reached down towards his bag on the floor and began digging into it. Hinata watched silently, puzzled. He pulled out 3 black notebooks and a few papers and handed it to her. You've been out of school for a while, so I thought I'd bring you the notes you missed as well as the worksheets. Hinata's heart melted at his kindness as she hugged the items close to her chest. She couldn't figure out why Tonari was always so nice to her. She didn't really know much about him. They rarely hung out, and when they did, it was mostly at school, and plus there was always something unsettling about him that she could not figure out, which in turn made her a little uncomfortable around him, but he didn't seem to mind. He was always just there. Hinata could recall her first day at the university, wandering through the halls unable to find her CL, then out of nowhere he was standing right before her, smiling gently. He reached a hand out to help her with no hesitation, like he had known her his whole life or something. Thank you so much, Tonari-kun, she said, smiling lightly at him. You really didn't have. Nonsense. Tonari started. I wouldn't be able to call myself your friend if I didn't. Plus, Tonari walked closer toward Hinata and took both her hands. It was worth getting a chance to see your beautiful smile again. Hinata's cheeks reddened at the realization and a bit of his words. She was indeed smiling, which confused her. Her eyes darted back to Tonari's, which were now filled with concern. How are you doing? He asked, his hands tightening around hers a little too tightly, in fact. Hinata's gaze immediately hit the floor. What do you mean? She questioned. She knew exactly what he was talking about but hoped he would back off and understand. Tonari knitted his eyebrows, obviously realizing something was up. Are you still thinking about that guy? It's okay if you don't want to talk about it. Tonari smiled gently at her and lightly raised a hand to tuck a strain of Hinata's hair behind her ear. Hinata shivered at the contact. He was YS a little too affectionate. I understand completely, I just hate to see you so sad. His hand now moved from her ears to the side of her face. It's nothing, there's just a lot of drama going on, I'll be fine. Sorry for worrying you. Hinata tried to move away but Tonari followed her. No, it's not fine. Hinata-san, when's the last time you've left the house? Tonari asked seriously. Hinata looked down, refusing to answer him, causing Tonari to be more concerned. Okay, that does it. Come with me. Tonari took Hinata's hand again and started walking towards the door. Hinata panicked. Wait, where are we going? She questioned. Somewhere that's not here. Tonari grabbed a lavender coat that was hanging in Hinata's closet. Here, put this on, he said, handing her the coat. But Hinata refused to move. She stood there frozen, her eyes not leaving the ground. She didn't want to leave the comforts of her apartment. She was still scared. I don't want to go, she whispered. Tonari turned to her and frowned. She was shaking and looked as if she was on the verge of tears. He walked over to her and kneeled so that he could face her properly. Hinata-san, please, you can't stay here and hide forever, he said softly. Hinata bit down hard on her lip. She knew he was right, but still fear took over her. I'm scared. ICA. Toneri suddenly took her chin in his hand and forced her to look at him. Don't worry. I won't let anything happen to you, he said boldly. His eyes never left hers, making sure she knew his words were true. Hinata stared back into his eyes. She couldn't figure out any reason not to trust him, but something felt off. Nevertheless, she pushed those thoughts to the side and came back to reality. Her face grew red as she realized how close they were, and she instantly jumped back. Toneri couldn't help but smirk at her actions. So won't you join me, Hinata-san? Hinata remained silent with hesitation, but eventually nodded her head. Okay. Sure. Ooh, I can't believe what an idiot Naruto is being, Ino squealed, tightening in her fist in frustration. Her, Tenten, and Sakura had all decided to go for a walk and try out this new restaurant that had opened that wasn't too far from their university. Their conversation started out regularly. They talked about what they would try when they got there, but when a certain menu item came up that reminded them of a certain person, their conversation had shifted immediately. Yeah, I know. When is he going to realize he likes Hinata already? I swear that idiot can be so slow sometimes, Sakura agreed. The two girls turned around to look at Tenten, who was unusually quiet and trailing behind them. Is there something wrong? Ino asked, concerned. Tenten snapped her head up. Huh. No, I'm fine, it's just that. What if? She trailed off and started to mumble something the girls couldn't understand. Sakura stopped walking and waited for Tenten to catch up to her. We can't hear you. Speak up, what's eating you? Tenten glanced to her side before she exhaled sharply. What if he really doesn't love her? Quote. Sakura's eyes widened and Ino came to a complete stop. The shock of her words silenced the three. That's ridiculous, Tenten, do you even hear yourself right now? Sakura said, brushing her off. Ino ran back towards the two to join the conversation. Yeah, think about it, Hinata was the only one who never stopped caring about Naruto from the very beginning, egging, even as far back as when the whole town practically turned their back on him, Ino preached. What man in their right mind wouldn't love her after all that? Tenten shrugged her shoulders. I don't know, it's just when you look at the events that took place it just doesn't add up, Tenten retorted. Sakura raised an eyebrow. What do you mean by that? Well, for one thing, he did used to have a crush on you, Sakura. Even when Hinata was right there. Then after he got over you, he not only indirectly rejected Hinata, he started dating several other women. I mean, who does that to the person they love? Tenten said, clenching her jaw in anger. Sakura and Ino looked at Tenten in shock, then at each other. Sakura could see the worry taking over Tenten. She really did care about Hinata a lot. Sakura pulled Tenten into a side hug. I think the problem is that Naruto doesn't know what it is to be in love. Quote. Tenten looked up at Sakura in confusion. I don't understand. Sakura patted Tenten's head and continued. Well, think about it. Naruto grew up practically his whole life alone. He had no parents to come home to and tell them they loved him, and there was a point in his life where he had no friends whatsoever. Sakura started to walk with Tenten and kept talking. Remember when we were little, and he used to run around town pulling pranks and destroying things? Tenten nodded her head. Yeah, my parents, when they were alive, told me to stay away from him. Everyone used to call him the demon fox boy because those whiskers he has. Quote. Well, imagine how lonely it was for him to be isolated like that. I bet you he did all that stuff for attention, just so he sue. LD have someone take interest in him for second, plus the girlfriends he did have were, let's be honest, complete scumbags. Sakura reasoned. Remember the one that stole all his tuition money, spent it on drugs, alcohol and a new car, and then tried to blame it on her cat. I mean, honestly, where did he find those girls? There was no love in those relationships, said Sakura. Oh, I get it. Ino started. So you're saying that the reason he hasn't been able to realize he loves Hinata is because he never experienced any form of love before and he dated all those women. Because he was searching for it. Exactly. Poor guy is so lost, it's ridiculous. He even started liking me to compete against Sasuke like it was some game or something, Sakura responded, shaking her head. I mean, do you see the way he lights up when he's with Hinata? His smile is so bright it's blinding. He would spend every second with her if he could trust me. If that's not love, I don't know what is. Tenten smiled lightly. I hope you guys are right, I just feel so bad for Hinata. Both Ino and Sakura nodded their heads in agreement. I just hope she holds on a little longer. It seems like he's slowly starting to get it now. Man, do I wish I could confront him, but I know Hinata would hate me if I did that, Sakura said, sighing. When Sakura looked at Naruto and Hinata's relationship, she couldn't help but compare it to her own with Sasuke. Both of them were fighting to be acknowledged by the ones they loved. All Sakura could do now was support Hinata like she had been doing for her. Guys. Naruto better figure it out fast because it might already be too late, Ino said, directing the two other girls' attentions forward. Sakura and Tenten followed Ino's gaze to a white truck pulling up along the curb down the street. Emerging from the car was none other than Hinata herself, along with a familiar face that the girls could not pinpoint. Holy crap, it's Hinata, what the hell is she doing here? No one has seen or heard from her in days, Sakura said in a hushed tone, staring dumbfounded at the pair. More importantly, who the hell is that yummy piece of man she's with and where has he been my whole life? Ino said, licking her lips and ogling the mysterious fellow. Ino, please, it's not the tea. Sakura was interrupted by Tenten swiftly grabbing her and Ino by the arm and pulling them behind a wall. Shush, they're coming this way, Tenten whispered, pressing her pointer finger firmly against her lips. Wonderf, Ino started before Sakura clamped her hand against her mouth to silence her. The three girls' bodies clenched up when they realized that they were getting closer. They thought they had been discovered, but to their relief the pair walked right past the ally they had been hiding in without even so much as a glance. They all in union released the stressful breaths they had been holding in. Okay, the back was not nearly as impressive as the front, but we can work on that, Ino said, still focused on the man in question. Never mind that, what the hell is going on? I thought Hinata was still cuckoo for Naruto. Tenten said, peering out of the ally and watching Hinata and her companion enter a restaurant. Sakura rubbed her temples in frustration. I know, me too, this is bad, we were so close, damn it. Who does that guy think he is, ruining my baby's relationship? And why does he look so familiar? Sakura stomped her feet, she was so mad, she could spit. Tenten came back into the ally with a sigh. More bad news, guys, they went into the same exact restaurant we were going to. Quote, everyone let out an UGHH sound and slumped to the ground. Great. There's no way we can all go in there now, Hinata will flip out, Sakura said, raking her fingers through her hair. You're right. We can't all go. Ino started. I'll go by myself then. Don't worry guys, I got this, thank me later. She then started running out of the ally reeking of lust, but Tenten grabbed her arm to stop her. Nice try, Tenten said sarcastically. Come on, you guys all have men in your life, what's wrong with this kitty getting some action from that fluffy-haired hunk? I'm sure Hinata wouldn't mind, it's a win-win, Ino whined. Wait, fluffy-haired. Sakura said, trailing off in thought. Scenes from the fateful night at the club flooded her mind. Ah, guys. Now I remember who that guy is. He's from the club, the one Naruto beat the shit out of. Sakura smiled at her remembrance. You mean the perv? Ino shrieked, her hands flung to the sides of her head and she fisted her hair. Gross. He just lost like a million attractive points. Tenten began to panic. Well, what's he doing with her? Exclamation mark. Is she in some kinda trouble? OMG, we have to save her. Sakura grabbed Tenten and began shaking her. Calm down, let's not jump to conclusions, that's how we get into trouble. You saw what happened to Naruto and Sasuke a few times. Quote. Tenten took a deep breath and exhaled. You're right, I'm sorry. Okay, I got a glimpse of her when she was walking by. She seemed fine, in fact I think I could see almost a smile growing on her face, Sakura reasoned. Maybe they're friends or something. Well, let's go find out, we can sneak in through the back, that's way they don't see us, Tenten said, walking ahead of the girls. Ino and Sakura scurried behind her and tried to catch up. Meanwhile, Hinata and Tonari were ordering food inside of the restaurant. Tonari stared at the still obviously depressed Hinata, who was staring out the window and resting her head on her hand. So what do you think of this place? Tonari said, trying to lighten the mood. Hinata, however, didn't respond, still staring out the window in deep thought. Tonari frowned, looking at her demeanor. You could tell in her eyes that depression was really eating away at her, so this guy must have meant a lot to her. Tonari cringed at the possibilities. Lover, ex-lover, close friend, family. Whoever he was, Tonari despised him. Did your boyfriend ever call you after what happened? Tonari said, testing the waters. Hinata's head spun in his direction in alarmed, her deep thoughts interrupted. He's not my. But you like him, right? Tonari asked more demandingly. He could feel his blood boiling as he waited for her response. Hinata's eyes widened at his question. How was he able to read her so easily? Her shoulders rose and her line of vision shifted as she became suddenly nervous by his question. Which in turn made Tonari even more curious. Well, okay, yes. I like him, Hinata blurted under pressure, her cheeks staining with emberment. Tonari became irritated. Someone like that didn't deserve Hinata's love. How was it possible for Hinata to even stand being in the same room with the loser? Sure, he had a decent face, but other than that there was nothing really special about him. He had a horrible attitude, and anger issues from what he could tell. Tonari loathed the idea of Hinata liking any guy, but at least pick someone who's halfway decent. But, I want to stop, Hinata stuttered out. Tonari looked at her confusingly, causing her to clarify her statement. I want to get over him and love someone else. Tonari couldn't help but smirk a little bit at her words. She had made the right decision. After all, she couldn't be with anyone else, she belonged to him. Now that he knew that other guy was out of the picture, all he had to do was convince her. I apologize, Hinata-san, but I don't know the full story, so I'm a little confused. You like him? Yet you don't want to? He said, purposely trying to get more info out of her. Hinata let out a sigh. She began to consider telling Tonari about her issues. He seemed like a good listener and she wasn't comfortable telling any of her other friends yet since they were somewhat involved in the situation, plus she could trust him, right? Okay. It started all the way back in high school. Hinata poured her heart out to Tonari, revealing details her own close friends didn't even know. Tonari listened closely, nodding his head and comforting her when he felt it was necessary. They were so engrossed in their conversation, in fact, that they didn't notice a group of girls staring at them in the distance. Can you hear what they're saying? Tenten said, peering over her menu. The girls had managed to sneak their way into the restaurant and now were seated 3 tables away from them near the windows. Yeah, sort of. She's telling him what happened between her and Naruto. Sakura said, sneakily looking over her seat at the duo. Tenten face palmed. Why does she trust this creep so much? Are they dating now or something? Quote. Well, with that face, who could blame her? Ino said, causing the other girls to roll their eyes. Shish. I think I just heard her say she wants to give up on Naruto, Sakura whispered. What? Question mark. Quote. Ino yelled, drawing attention to herself. Both Tenten and Sakura slammed their hands over Ino's mouth, forcing her to fall back in the sofa chair. People in the shop began staring at all of them and fear once again took over. The 3 quickly sunk down in their seats to avoid being seen by their targets. Ino, you pig, what if Hinata noticed us? Sakura whispered, yelled. Tenten peered over their seat at the 2. It's okay, they're still wrapped up in their conversation. Quote. Guys, this is not good. What if Bunny starts dating this guy before Naruto gets a chance to talk to her? Ino whined, her bottom lip sticking out with a pout. Over my dead body. I put too much into trying to get Naruto and Hinata together. I'm not gonna just let some dude slide in ruin tea. They belong together. I don't care how good looking he is, Sakura raged, taking an anger gulp of her drink. We just need a plan. Way ahead of you, Tenten said with an very alarming smile daunting her face. Ino and Sakura became weary. What did you do? They said simultaneously. I may or may not have put enough laxative in his drink to make him have the runs for weeks, Tenten said with a tinge of humor in her voice. Sakura's mouth gaped. OMG 10, are you trying to get us arrested? When I said we needed a plan, I meant a way to separate the 2 of them, not poisoning the guy. Well, they'll definitely be separated after that, Tenten chuckled. Look, he's about to drink it. Quote. Aw shit, why are we so unlucky today? Sakura said in a panicked voice and staring out the window. What, it's just diarrhea for a few weeks, relax, Tenten commented. Sakura grabbed both Ino and Tenten by the shoulders and spun them around. No, look out the window down the street. Quote. Both girls leaned forward and squinted, trying to get a better look. Coming down the street was none other than Sasuke and Naruto, walking and having what seemed like their normal loud debates. Oh no, what do we do? Ino said, now also panicking. We stop them, that's what we do, Tenten said, springing out of her seat and sprinting to the back door. Come on Ino, Hinata does not need any more drama right now, Sakura said, taking Ino's arm and following Tenten. Why are you being such an? Just tell me what's going on already, Naruto whined as he sped walk to keep up with Sasuke. Just give it a rest already, nothing happened between me and Sakura, Sasuke responded, looking straight ahead. Naruto quickly ran around Sasuke so he was face to face with him. Cut the crap. Okay, I've seen the way you two have been acting around each other, avoiding eye contact, Sakura making me give you rides to school, everyone's been talking and I'm just gonna be blunt, after the night at the club did you guys have a one-night stand or something? Hey you guys. A familiar voice yelled from down the street. Well damn, it's like she heard me. Yo Sakura-chan, what's up? Naruto said, jogging with his hands in his pockets to meet her halfway, Sasuke walking quickly behind him in fear of what he might say. Sakura rested her hands on her knees as she leaned over to catch her breath, the girls right behind her. What are you doing here? She said in between breaths. I heard there was this new restaurant that opened up, so I wanted to check it out. I got Sasuke to somehow tag Ong, Naruto said, looking down at her. Sakura looked over at Sasuke, who had now caught up. The moment their eyes met, she couldn't look away. There was so much she still wanted to say to him, but she knew there was more important matters at hand. Sakura shook her head, clearing her mind and the blush that dawned her face, and faced Naruto again. Well, we were just in there and let me tell you, the food was disgusting, isn't that right, girls? Ino and Tenten looked confused for a second but quickly shook their heads. So yeah, don't waste your money, you should eat somewhere else. Naruto's eyes squinted. I don't really know about that. You say ramen sucks, but that stuff is delicious, so I think I'll try the food for myself before I judge. Naruto said, walking past her. Sakura followed close behind him and yet again threw herself in front of him. Wait, maybe I should give ramen another try. In fact, how about we all go and get some together? On me at Ichiraku's, she said pleadingly. They have ramen here and I heard it might even be better than Ichiraku's, which I highly doubt, but I'll never get no if I don't try it, Sakura-chan, so I'll pee, he said, patting her shoulders and again walking around her. Then it was Ino and Tenten's turn to try and stop him. Naruto, you never did tell me what flowers you wanted from my shop, Ino started. And weren't me and you supposed to go boxing? Tenten added. Naruto scrunched up his face in confusion. What the hell is up with you guys? Sakura was about to turn around and join them, when she felt someone bump into her. She looked up to see it was Sasuke. Sorry, she whispered and began to turn around when Sasuke grabbed her shoulders, making her see him. Sakura's eyes widened and that same blush that she pushed away began to grow on her face again. He lowered his head, so that his lips hovered over her ear. She could feel his warm breath tickle it and scrunch up her shoulders, her once light pink blush scorching red. Sasuke-kun, what's going on? He whispered, cutting her off. Sakura shivered. A part of her was a little disappointed that he was just trying to whisper to her, but she recovered. The restaurant. Look in the window, who do you see? She whispered. Sasuke looked over her shoulder at the restaurant window where he saw Hinata chatting away with her pale companion. So that's it. Sakura lightly pushed Sasuke away from her body, shocking him a bit. Now that you understand, will you help stop that idiot? She said, looking away awkwardly. Sasuke's eyes relaxed. Now being able to see her face, he understood why she had pushed him. She was blushing heavily and he knew that he was the cause of it. She was definitely embered and he was loving every second of it. Fine, he said, a smirk tugging his lips. He walked past her to reach Naruto, purposely brushing his arm against hers in the process. His satisfaction sparked when he heard her squeak. Yo Dobi, I've lost interest, let's go. Sasuke said, dragging Naruto by the back of his collar. Hey, wait a secteme. Let me go, Naruto yelled, thrashing and squirming as Sasuke dragged him along. The girls all let out a breath of relief. Oh, thank God, that would have been ugly, Ino muttered. Tenten and Sakura nodded in agreement. Yeah, now, let's hightail ours out of here. I think we had enough nonsense for the day, Tenten said. The girls were all prepared to walk away and join Sasuke and Naruto when the jingling from the restaurant door opening alarmed them. They all turned around towards the door in what seemed like slow motion, fear striking their hearts. And there it was, their worst fears standing right in front of them. Hinata and Tonari had just exited the restaurant and now were staring at them in utter trauma. No one said anything, the group just stood there in what appeared like a staring contest, their mouths agape. The only thing that crossed the girl's mind at that very moment was that they were majorly ed. Hinata gulped. Just as she anticipated had come true. What are you? What are why you guys doing here? She managed to get out. The girls, however, remained silent, trying to come up with an excuse or anything at that moment. Were you ladies spying on us? Tonari asked for her, placing a hand on Hinata's shoulder for support. Sakura and the girls immediately tensed at the question. No, well, not exactly. Sakura started, making Hinata frown. We're really just looking out for Hinata, honestly we weren't TR. She was interrupted by a loud, Hinata. Sakura closed her eyes in defeat. She knew who that voice was. Hinata's head instantly snapped towards the sound of the voice. Her insides twisted. Nausea came flooding into her like water, followed by turmoil and sorrow. She never wanted to run more in her life than right now. Naruto had managed to escape Sasuke's grasp. He had tried to recover him, but once Naruto had seen Hinata, there was no turning back. He violently ripped Sasuke's hands from his clothing, stretching it, and shoved him. Hinata retreated behind Tonari when she saw him start running down the block to meet up with her. She gripped the back of Tonari's shirt and squeezed her eyes shut, hoping that he would be gone once she opened them. It's okay, Hinata-san, remember my words, Tonari whispered, getting in a defensive stance. Hi. Nah. Hinata. Naruto breathed out. He looked over at her and became saddened by her response to seeing him. He swallowed back his anxiety and began to speak. Please. Can we talk? Sakura, Ino and Tenten could only watch in sadness at the scene taking place right in front of them. Hinata began trembling and Tonari took it as a sign to speak up. You and her have nothing, discuss your effort as futile, he seethed. Naruto's gaze sharpened towards Tonari. I wasn't talking to you. He began an angry march towards Tonari, until he was standing right in front of him. You just don't know when to shut your mouth, do ya? It's fine though, looks like I'll just have to kick you again for you to get it, Naruto said. Rolling up his sleeves. You just don't enjoy hearing the truth. You've done nothing but cause pain to this girl, and now you think you can just walk and give her some half apology and then everything will be okay. She deserves better than this, why not just leave her alone and stop pretending like you care about her? Tonari argued back, walking closer towards Naruto. Naruto became engulfed with rage. He reached over and grabbed Tonari by his collar, lifting him up slightly. Shut your mouth. He yelled in his face. You don't know anything about me and Hinata's relationship. I care more about Hinata than even myself. She is everything to me. Tears once again began streaming down Hinata's face. Naruto, stop it, you're taking this too far, Sakura said, trying to defuse the situation. Stay out of this. There's no way I'm just gonna sit here and let this baster say lies, Naruto raged. Ha, lies you say? If they're lies, then why is this girl in tears? Obviously she must not be feeling this care that you supposedly give to her, Tonari responded with almost wicked smirk across his face. Naruto loosened his grip and looked over at Hinata. Hinata, you can't really believe that I don't care about you, Naruto said in a low tone of voice. Hinata's gaze met the floor and Naruto felt his stomach sink. Hinata then slowly walked over to the two and faced Naruto, surprising him. Let him go, she demanded. Naruto felt a tinge of pain slash his heart. He released his grip on Tonari completely, his gaze never leaving hers. Hinata, please, can we just? Hinata grabbed Tonari's hand while still glaring up at Naruto. Don't you ever do anything like this again, you hear me? She said in a low, threatening voice. Another painful slash grazed his heart. Hinata had never looked at him like that before. What happened to that sweet, innocent smile she wore whenever they spoke? Or that light, bubbly laugh she'd let out when he told a joke and then tried to conceal? Where was that soothing voice that made him feel like nothing in the world could ever hurt him again? What happened to the Hinata he had worked so hard to get back again, the one he wanted to be with always? The one standing before him was none of the sorts. This one gazing up at him with such an vexing stare was destroyed. Her eyes were filled with nothing but misery, misery that he had put there. Hinata pulled Tonari in the opposite direction and walked away from the scene, not looking back. Hinata, wait a second. Naruto called after her, but she refused to turn around and keep walking. His head drooped to the ground in defeat and Sasuke placed a hand on his shoulder in an effort to show some sympathy. Let's go, Dobi. We're starting to make a scene, he said quietly. People from all places came out their stores and were now staring at the group, some were even on the phone with what was sounded like the police. Just then Naruto's head shot up and something else replaced the sorrow in his eyes. Hinata. He called after her again, placing his hands to the side of his face, making sure he was loud enough to be heard. I'm not gonna give up. I will get you to speak to me. You and I will be together again, we'll both be happy this time, you hear me? Apparently his words struck a nerve because she suddenly stopped walking completely, Tonari looking down at her in confusion. I know you have some resentment towards me, some of it I understand, some of it I'm still confused by, but I want you to know I will never make you cry again, Hinata, and I will do what it takes to earn your trust again. Just you wait, watch, I'll never go back on my word. Tonari tugged at Hinata's arm, trying to get her to walk again. Hinata-san, what are you doing? Let's leave, you don't need to listen to this nonsense, he pleaded, but Hinata ignored him and turned around. She put her hands to the side of her face and yelled back at him, well, see about that. She said with tears in her eyes, I accept your challenge. She then turned around and continued walking, Tonari running behind her. Sakura ran up to comfort Naruto once again. Hey, it's okay, everything will work. Oh, you. Sakura looked up to see Naruto smiling. What are you smiling about? She questioned. Naruto laughed at her reaction. Well, let's just say I'm really looking forward to something. Quote, Hinata-san, what you did back there wasn't wise. Now he will never leave you alone, Tonari said, starting the engine of his car. I'm tired of being so cowardly, Tonari-kun, running away and hiding like some scared bunny, Hinata said, gazing out the car window. We share the same group of friends and we work at the same cafe, so we're bound to run into each other. Tonari let out a sigh as pulled out the parking spot. So what's the plan then? Hinata turned to face him with a smirk on her face. You said you and your friends were going on a Goken together. Right. Tonari kneaded his eyebrows together. Yes. You're not thinking of coming, are you? Hinata let out a chuckle. Yup. I'm serious this time, Tonari-kun. I will give up on Naruto-kun for good. That same sinister smile spread across Tonari's face. Everything was going according to plan. Whatever you say, Hinata-san. The sun's light began to dull, marking the end of the day and the beginning of the evening. His body screamed for sleep, but his mind was wide awake. There was nothing to do, nowhere to go. His friends were probably all out doing things and enjoying their lives. But where was he? Curled up in his bed, staring at the ceiling, alone. Maybe he'd turn on the TV and catch up on some shows he'd missed, or play another round of Call of Duty on his PlayStation. Or maybe he'd attempt to cook something healthily for once. Ramen sounded good, but for some reason these days it had lost that special touch, like something was missing. Even though these thoughts had crossed his mind, his body still refused to move from its spot, as if it was glued there. He gave in and let out a frustrated sigh. It was no use, he was stuck in a funk. This apartment had always been lonely. People rarely came to visit. It was dark, cramped, and the place was a few more storms away from falling apart. But he had always found a way to make light of it. He'd stay out for as long as he could to avoid coming home, and when he was here by himself, he'd invite people over to liven the place up. So why was it so hard to do that now? Why now had he let himself be swallowed by the depths of loneliness that he had pushed away for so many years? Naruto looked across his room and out the window for an answer. That's when something caught his eye. There on the table next to the windowsill a picture sat, a picture of someone in particular. His questions were answered. Now he understood everything. It wasn't loneliness he was feeling, it was longing. He missed her. How long had it been since their fight? A few days. Weeks. It was like she was a drug or something. The withdrawal was killing him. Every time he'd go to work and see her, it was like silent torture. He'd greet her and thankfully, she remained polite just as she had always been and responded, but that was as far as any conversation between them went. They'd work side by side, not exchanging a single word. Occasionally he'd catch her staring at him with this look in her eyes, and for a second he'd believed she felt the same way, that she missed him as well. But once their eyes met, her face would tighten and she'd look away. Naruto rolled over on his side and frowned. There had to be more to the reason why Hinata was acting this way. Sure, he had been wrong for what he did, but to have a response like this. Something else must be up. In fact, now that he thought about it, this situation kinda reminded him of what happened in high school. She distanced herself and then soon no one heard from her, and then before he had a chance to figure out what was wrong, she was gone. And to make it even more confusing, no one questioned it, and no one was questioning it now, like he was the only one who didn't know what was going on. He hated it. Why was he the only one left in the shadows? Hinata was his friend too. He needed to find out what was going on. He hadn't pressed the subject out of respect and to spare feelings, but he couldn't do it anymore. If Hinata and he were to ever fully repair their relationship, he needed to know all the facts. He needed to find out the real reason why Hinata had left all those years ago, and while he was at it, figure out what exactly caused this change in her. Naruto sprung up from his bed and moved quickly out of his room. He needed to know now. And he knew exactly who to go to. He looked around his apartment for his favorite orange hoodie he wore for good luck, but couldn't find it. It had been missing for a while actually. He gave up and settled for a black jacket before heading out the door. He was about to open his car door when a buzzing in his front pocket caught his attention. It was a text message. "One venti Americano and a straight black coffee for the gentleman," Hinata said, playfully curtsying, causing her guest to burst out in laughter. "Why, thank you, milady. Come now, sit. Kiba said, extending his hands to the seat across from him. Hinata giggled as she sat down. It was a regular Wednesday evening. Hinata had been slaving at work when she received an unexpected visit from two of her close friends, Kiba and Shino. It wasn't that she wasn't happy to see them again, it was just things were still kinda weird. After all, it had been a while since they spoke. But they didn't let her feel awkward at all, laughing and joking with her just as they always did. Hinata was really happy to have them, so she treated them to some coffee, on her since they traveled such a distance to visit. Plus her shift was almost done and there was barely anyone in the cafe, so she had some time to kill. "So how have you been, Missy?" Kiba said, sipping his coffee. "We haven't heard from you in what? A month or so." Hinata's smile slightly faded. "Oh. Fine. I just needed some time to think. I'm sorry if I hurt you guys," she said, looking down at her cup of coffee. Shino shook his head, dismissing her comment. "There's no need to feel bad, Hinata, we understood the circumstances." Kiba nodded his head in agreement. "Yeah, Naruto's a giant buffoon. I can't believe him," he growled. No, you guys stop it. It's not his fault. It's mine. Naruto was just looking out for me. I just got my feelings mixed up in the situation and lashed out. I guess I was never able to accept the fact he and I were just friends," Hinata said, lifting her coffee up towards her lips. "But don't you guys worry, I won't make that same mistake again." She took a long sip of her coffee without a stitch of emotion, concerning the two men. "So what, you're just gonna give up? That's it. No more Naruto-kun this and Naruto-kun that?" Kiba questioned. Hinata slouched back in her seat and let out a sigh. "Well, yes, what else is there left to do? I've been chasing after him for years. He has shown no sign of having any romantic feelings towards me, and he made it very clear years ago that the very thought of us being together was weird." Hinata met Kiba's gaze sorrowfully. "I can't go on living like this, going after something that I will ever have. I think it's better for the both of us if I let him go and move on. After all, before I fell in love with Naruto, he was just my best friend, and I'd like for us to at least salvage our friendship." Quote. Kiba raked both his hands through his hair in frustration. "But Hinata, you don't need to give up. There's no doubt in my mind that that idiot loves you. You just need to give him more time," Kiba challenged. Hinata's face softened. "You all say that, but when has Naruto ever confided that to you or even hinted at that? Face it, Kiba-kun, he doesn't love me." Kiba turned to Shino in defeat. "Shino, help me out here." Quote. Shino sighed. "Hinata-san, Kiba's right. Though Naruto hasn't expressed it in words, we all can clearly see that he's deeply in love with you. He treats you differently from the rest of us, even down to the way he looks at you. please just give it some time, he's a little slow when it comes to the say things, but I'm sure he will get it eventually, Shino pleaded. Hinata let out a chuckle. You know, I'm starting to feel like you guys only came to visit me specifically for this reason. Fine, I won't make any promises, but I'll keep an open mind. Are you happy now? Both Kiba and Shino nodded their heads, causing Hinata to smile. Well, good, but I'm still not speaking to him, she said unvaryingly. Both Kiba and Shino made an UGH sound to express their displeasure, to that in which Hinata laughed yet again. I'm sorry guys, but I think me and Naruto-kun should keep our distance for a while. I don't want to fall back into old habits, Hinata said. A smirk grew on Kiba's face. You said Naruto-kun, Kiba said teasingly. No, I didn't, Hinata stuttered, becoming irritated. Yes you did, just give in already, you're not gonna be able to give up on Naruto and you won't be able to avoid him. Why are girls so difficult? Look, just go up to him, tell him you love him and run off into the sunset holding hands or something. Kiba said, resting his head in his hand. Hinata's face became red with frustration. Why wasn't anyone able to understand the position she was in? You can't just ask someone whose heart has been broken several times to forget it and try to it work again. That's crazy, and even if she could make it work, she had no confidence. Who's to say she wouldn't just get hurt again? Whatever, I don't care what you say, Hinata said, brushing off Kiba's words. I have a cupid on my side now. Kiba raised an eyebrow and began to question her. What do you mean, a cupid? He said, leaning forward, intrigued. Hinata smiled mischievously. Oh, he's just a guy that is trying to help me find love in this cruel, cruel world. Quote. Kiba wrinkled his eyebrows in confusion. Are you sleeping around with some man who wears diapers? He questioned. Hinata's eyes nearly pop out of her head at Kiba's question. What? No. My friend is just helping me find a boyfriend, ISWE. Kiba held his sides as he died in laughter. I was Saint kidding, Hinata. Man, your face was priceless. He continued laughing obnoxiously, causing Shino to even chuckle a bit. Hinata crossed her arms and rolled her eyes. She was embered, but she wasn't about to let Kiba know that. So who is this Cupid guy? Do I know him? Kiba asked. Hinata became weary and hesitated before answering. I don't know, maybe, she said, trying to avoid the question. Shino and Kiba looked at each other as if they came to the same conclusion. Please don't tell us it's that white hair fella from that club, Kiba said, annoyed. Hinata remained silent and the boys had their answer. Kiba squeezed the bridge of his nose. Look, Hinata, I've heard a lot of things. I don't know too much about this guy and I don't want to seem like I'm bossing you around or anything, so all I will say is this. Just be careful. Hinata looked at Kiba with so much skepticism that his eyes began to sting. He's not a bad guy, you know. Don't listen to what the others are telling you, she said. Telling me what? That he's a creep, pervert, stalker, possibly a convicted felon. No, I have no reason to believe that stuff at all. After all, I know so much about this guy, Kiba said sarcastically. Hinata frowned. I've known him for a while, since the beginning of the semester. He's nice, polite, and he's ready smart, Hinata replied. Sounds like the perfect cover-up. Soon he'll be so kind that he will invite you over to his house for tea, and then in his bedroom to look at his teapot collection, and then the next thing you know you'll be waking up in his bed but because he slipped something in your tea, Kiba said. Kiba, stop, Hinata said, rubbing her temples. It's true. Hey, men are pigs. Just because he smiles to your face doesn't mean he doesn't have a motive, Kiba said, smirking. You should just listen to us, and whatever you do, don't even think of falling for this guy. I've got a bad feeling that's all the advice I can give you. Hinata rolled her eyes. Sure, whatever you say, Daddy, she said jokingly. Kiba smirked. Ooh, Daddy, I like that. Call me that from now on. The three busted out laughing. A spark of happiness washed over her. She valued their friendship deeply. Just their presence was almost therapeutic to her. She really needed this, a time to just relax, joke around and try and ease up on the drama. Hinata sighed with contentment. It was a nice feeling. Sadly, a feeling that wouldn't last for long. The door of the cafe swung open, startling the three. But who was at the door was even more frightening in Hinata's case. The cold air from outside filled the room as the person walked in, tracking what appeared to be snow in the store with each step. Man, it's really coming down out there, he said, attempting to clear the snow from his blonde hair. Hinata's eyes met the person's and the smile she was once wearing faded instantly. Hinata. What? Naruto started before turning around and narrowing his eyes at Kiba. Kiba, what the hell is going on? I thought you needed to talk. It was then Hinata's turn to look at the wolf-like boy with suspicion, and once she put the pieces together her glare sharpened. Kiba and Shino looked at each other and nodded. Well, we did our part. See ya guys. The two boys stood up from their booth and began to exit. Hinata started to panic. Wait. If you guys are going, I'm going too. I certainly don't need to be here. Kiba and Shino stopped in their tracks and turned towards her. But your shift is not officially over, right, Hinata? Hyu. Gah. Kiba said loud enough for her manager to hear. It must have worked because the manager came running around the corner and gave Hinata a look that screamed, get back to work. Hinata was fuming. What traitors, this was their plan all along, wasn't it? Ooh, they were going to pay for this later. Hinata whipped around to confront the two just to catch them out the door and sprinting down the street, leaving her alone with Naruto. Well, that was just great. Now she was stuck. The two stood awkwardly facing one another, greeted by nothing but utter silence. Naruto played with his jacket collar and scratched the back of his neck, while Hinata crossed her arms and shifted her gaze throughout the cafe. Their actions continued like that for a while before Naruto could no longer stand it. Ahem. Hinata, I had no idea they were going to do this. I swear, he explained meekly. Though she believed him, Hinata didn't even dare to look into his eyes. She was not willing to even let him think they were on good terms for a second. There was yet again silence. Whatever, she mumbled blankly before turning away from him. Her actions brought pain to his chest, but Naruto still remained composed. He watched her stomp over to the table across from him and begin scrubbing it violently with a wet rag from her apron. Well, here was his chance to properly talk to her again and try to put at least a little of their relationship back together again. It was worth a shot. He cautiously walked towards her until he stood right behind her. Hey, Hinata, he started. Hinata shrieked in surprise and spun around to face to him. What is it? What do you want? She questioned shakily, her hands gripping the table behind her. Let's talk, he answered. His eyes were unwavering, his voice sounded determined. There was nothing that was going to get in his way this time, and she could see it. Still, Hinata refused to give in. There's nothing to talk about. She then turned around and walked away from him. But he was persistent. He followed and ran around her so he was right in front of her. He decided to try a different approach. Okay then, can I order a coffee then? Quote. Hinata raised an eyebrow. Make it yourself, you work here too. This time Hinata walked past him and ran behind the front counter, making sure to lock the little entrance employees used to get behind there. She then walked over to him from the other side, turned the coffee machine around and held out a cup from him. Here you go, she said. She was really making this difficult for him. All he wanted to do was talk. Was that so much? He reached across the counter and took the cup from her hand, then suddenly placed one hand on the counter and leapt over to the other side. Thank God there was only a few people in the shop, or this would look really bad. Hinata's mouth laid agape, as he faced the coffee machine in its correct direction. Nope, I'm just another one of your customers today, remember? I'm not on duty, he said, handing her the cup back with this almost taunting smile on his face. And I think our manager agrees. Hinata turned to look at the manager, who was enraged, writing on her notebook with so much force, Hinata thought she would drill a hole through it. Well, there went her bonus. This time Hinata looked up to Naruto, prepared to give him the biggest glare she could muster, but was surprised to see that same smile. What exactly was he doing? Was this some sort of game he was playing? Did he really think that forcing her to make him some coffee would somehow keep her in his presence longer? Or was he trying to get her to just speak to him? Whatever it was, she was not going to let him win. It was better for them to stay apart. Why couldn't he see that? Fine, I'll make you some coffee. If I do, will you stop whatever it is that you're doing? Naruto's smile grew wider. Doing what? He replied, playing innocent. Hinata groaned. Never mind. Naruto chuckled. He was having way more fun with this than he was supposed to. He hopped back over the counter and took a seat, making sure it was right in front of her. He watched her so intensely that she began to sweat, and every time she turned to catch him in the act, he'd look away. He was starting to get under her skin. Just like he wanted. Okay, is it really necessary to watch me the entire time? She said, growing frustrated. Naruto continued his act. What do you mean? I've been looking out the window this whole time, he said, furrowing his eyebrows to make himself look extra confused. You're lying. Just stop it, okay? She snapped, alerting the customers and the manager. Hinata, is that any way to treat a customer? The manager yelled across the room. But he keeps staring at me and he's not a customer and you know that. Hinata argued back. He's not wearing a Sweet Delight's apron, is he? So he's a customer. This is your first warning. Hinata sighed and gave in to the manager's demands. She looked over at Naruto and growled when she saw him placing his hand over his mouth, holding back his laughter. Glad to see you think this is funny, she said in a low, icy tone of voice. Naruto still smiled, however. I'm not laughing and you're the one who freaked out. You know, just because you're pretty doesn't mean everyone is staring at you, Tebeo. Hinata's eyes widened. Did he just call her pretty? What did you just call me? She asked. Naruto realized his words and soon his cheeks were dusted with pink. A T that came out wrong, forget it, he said. He himself was even confused by his words. Where did that come from? Sure, he was just being honest. Hinata had always been pretty. She had such an angelic face with those soft lavender eyes, with long delicate eyelashes to accompany them that made you just wanna melt. And that smooth dark hair with just a tint of blue that went all the way down her back like a waterfall, it was just mesmerizing. Her body wasn't bad either, but that wasn't the point. Anyone would find Hinata at least a little bit attractive, so why did it bother him so much to say it out loud? He couldn't even look at her right now without blushing. Hinata noticed his sudden discomfort and thought bad to keep his words. She quickly shook the thoughts away, afraid to fall back into the same pattern. Okay then, well, here's your coffee, now you can go, right? She said, pushing the coffee towards him, looking away. Naruto looked down at his coffee and back at Hinata before taking a giant sip. His eyes widened and he quickly set the coffee down like it was on fire or something. What is it? Did I mess it up or something? It's a caramel latte with milk and no sugar, is that not what you get? Hinata said, worried for some odd reason. Naruto stared at her once again with his mouth open, and no, it's just. You remembered. His gaze caused Hinata to become uneasy and a familiar feeling warmed her chest. Well, yeah, you told me that you liked caramel lattes, but you thought it was kinda girly, so whenever I got it for you and we were around our friends, I'd say I brought you a black coffee. Hinata began to unknowingly smile as she recalled the story. Haha, I'd do that so many times. One time I forgot to put sugar in it and you told me that you actually liked it better that way. She slapped her hand over her mouth and blushed wildly, realizing that she was rambling on about old times. They were close again. Hinata looked over to find Naruto smirking and resting his chin in both his hands. So that's why are you still here? She said, snapping back into her foul mood. I miss this. Being here chatting with you. Still don't wanna talk? Naruto said, playing with the lid of his coffee. Hinata hesitated for a moment before turning her back to Naruto. You take care, okay? She said and began walking away. Naruto watched her every step with longing. So you don't even miss our video game sessions? He said after her. But she didn't turn around, continuing her clean-up process. You know, the ones when you'd come over in the middle of the night to release some tension, as you called it. Hinata stopped wiping the counter for a second in thought but continued. When he worded it like that, it sounded kinda. My favorite parts were the noises you made when you felt like you were losing. It was music to my ears. The people in the cafe started to turn and look at Hinata with distaste and she began to feel uncomfortable. I've tried playing with other girls but they're never as good as you. And you last so long too. Hinata had enough. Naruto Street, stop saying it like that, it sounds wrong. She said, approaching him once again. But he knew exactly what he was doing, smirking with satisfaction. Oh, there's no need to be embered, it's okay for people to know about your wild side. Quote. Hinata looked around and noticed the staring had gotten worse. And I loved it when you felt things were getting too rough and you would grab my joystick to try to slow me down, but I still just kept going. Hinata reached over the counter and placed her hands over Naruto's mouth. Okay, let's talk. She yelled, her whole face now a crimson red. Naruto smirked between her fingers. He had won. Did we really have to come outside to do this? It's kinda, ya know, snowing. Naruto questioned as Hinata dragged him to a section behind the cafe. Yes. I don't want to risk you saying any more things that might ruin my reputation. Naruto bursted into laughter, and took the opportunity to tease her some more. He sneakily his arms around her waist and rested his chin on her shoulder so he could reach her ear. Hey, don't act all shy now. You know you liked it, he whispered playfully. Hinata quickly pushed him off her with sternness. Stop messing around. You wanted to talk, let's talk, she said once again, crossing her arms. Naruto's smile relaxed and then became serious. Okay. I get it. He let out a big breath before he continued, how should I put this? I'm sorry. Hinata raised an eyebrow. About? She questioned, trying to get him to deliberate. Naruto let out another shaky breath and began to walk back and forth. He wanted to make sure his words wouldn't be misconstrued. He shivered a bit. The snow was falling harder, and though they were sheltered by the mini roof above the back door, he could see Hinata was shivering. He needed to think quick. Everything. The fights, the jealousy, the exaggeration. I'm really sorry. I messed up and I know sorry can't fix what happened, but I have to try something. I miss you, Hinata. I want to work on this together. Like we promised, he said, looking off in the distance with regret. Hinata remained silent this time, looking at him. Seeing him look so remorseful almost stroked guilt in her heart and made her want to fall back into her usual personality, but she quickly brushed it off. She knew she had to remain strong. How do I know you mean it? She said, catching Naruto's attention. Huh, he said in confusion. She took a few steps towards him, so he could hear her and she could read his face better. I said, how do I know you mean it? How do I know you're not just saying this because you don't want me hanging out with Tonari-kun, or you're just trying to make things less awkward between us for our friends? Hinata leaned forward with a, waiting for a response. Naruto scratched his head. Wow, you're not gonna make this easy for me, are you? He questioned, smiling awkwardly. Hinata's face remained still and she shook her head no. Okay fine, I'll admit you hanging out with that Tonari guy. Tonari? Hinata corrected. Same thing. Anyway, made me uneasy. Jealous? Hinata corrected again. Naruto sighed. Okay, yeah, jealous. Insane. Crazy. But if you say he's just your friend and if hanging out with him makes you happy, then I suppose I should be happy for you. Hinata nodded her head, smiling a bit with satisfaction. He was really starting to get it. But if this friend of yours does anything to hurt you, he's dead, you hear me, and nobody will be able to find the body. Hinata simply rolled her eyes and nodded her head. Well, at least he was getting the just friend part. And oh, another thing, I'm not just doing this for the sake of our friends, I'm doing it because I'm a selfish idiot and I don't want my Hinata to hate me. Quote. Naruto peered down at Hinata. To his surprise, her cheeks were stained pink again. He wondered why. So what do you say? Are you willing to trust and forgive this big idiot? Again. Hinata remained quiet, thinking about her decision. Yeah, he was kinda dense and unreliable and an overall goofball, but she kinda liked those things about him. Yeah, he broke her heart several times, but she too played a big part in that, and he was again dense, so he didn't know. Plus, he did in a way help her to become stronger. And she was really trying to get over him this time, so she didn't have to worry too much about feelings. This would be like exposure therapy almost. And she was also a sucker for those sad, adorable looks he gave her. So what the heck? Well, I guess so. Naruto, however, was not convinced. He decided to recant Hinata's actions. I don't believe you, I'm gonna need some proof. Naruto, come on, I need to get back to work and it's cold. Oh, you. What are you doing? Naruto stood straight up with his arms extended outwards. If you're not mad at me, then give me a hug. Hinata scoffed. The old her would have jumped into his arms in a second, but the her right now hesitated. And no, why can't you just take my word for it? Hinata argued, her face growing redder. It's better to be safe than sorry. It's fine if you don't want to, I guess I'll just have to keep visiting you during your shifts to make sure, he said, smirking. Fine. Hinata awkwardly scooted towards him slowly, before Naruto impatiently took her by the waist and pulled her into his chest. Hinata fell silent. Her heart was beating so hard she swore it would burst through her chest. Her mind was hazily filled with panicked thoughts. Push him off. Don't trust him. It screamed, but her body wasn't willing to comply. It enjoyed that wonderful, intoxicating, woodsy scent his body was giving off. It was soothing, refreshing, almost as if she would drift off to sleep if she continued to stay like this. The cold only made it worse. Despite the freezing weather, he was oddly warm, so her body gravitated toward him. Hinata unconsciously pushed closer into him, burying her face into his chest. Naruto welcomed her and tightened the grip. She felt him begin to play with her hair. His fingers raked through her long tresses, while his others stroked her back. She almost hummed with delight at the wonderful feeling. But she wouldn't fall victim to his affection. This was exactly what she misunderstood last time. There is no feelings in his actions. Naruto's head lowered towards Hinata's now burning red ear. His mouth opened and her ears awaited his words. "So you don't hate me?" he whispered. Hinata wrapped her arms tightly around Naruto. "I've never hated you, Naruto-kun. How many times must I say it, you idiot?" Naruto buried his face into the crook of her neck in response to her words, and Hinata lost all sense of reality. Her hand instantly went to the back of his head, pulling him closer, turning her head so he could sink deeper into her neck. She never wanted him to feel hated. He was one of the people she cared about most. It was just this internal battle she was fighting that had caused her to lash out at him. Her desire to rid herself of this infatuation with him took over her, and the fact that he got jealous over a friend she had just added fuel to the flame. How dare he get so defensive about her hanging out with other men, she thought. They weren't even in that sort of relationship, but yet he had the audacity to forbid her from seeing a guy he knew nothing about. And to add to the wound, he didn't even want to be with her. She got mad, said and did something she was not proud of, and avoided him. Of course he would be hurt. In his mind he was trying to help, but Hinata was too angry to look at that. She was still running from her problems and hurting people along the way. Well, no more. She was going to find a way to deal with this thing her and Naruto had been going through in a clean, healthy way. No more avoiding, no more anger, just peace. "I'm sorry too, Naruto-kun, I overreacted," Hinata whispered to him, stroking his head. "You're my best friend in the whole entire world, you know that." Naruto stirred in her grasp. For some reason those words stung him more than soothed him. He removed his head from her neck and stared down at her. There were tears in her eyes. "Hey, why are you crying?" he questioned as he lifted a hand to her face to wipe the tears away. Hinata's eyes widened. She didn't even realize it. "Oh, I am, aren't I? Don't mind me, I'm just getting emotional." She tried turning her face away, but Naruto held it in place with both hands. He delicately wiped her tears away with his sleeve. "It's okay, you can be as emotional as you want around me." Quote. Hinata smiled as more tears leaked from her eyes. This was one of the reasons she fell for him. When they were together, she could be herself, all her barriers were broken down. "You're emotional too. Are those tears I see in your eyes?" Hinata teased. Naruto wiped his eyes with his sleeves. "Me? No, it's the snow. I must have gotten some on my face," Naruto argued. Hinata boldly took Naruto's face in her hands, surprising the blonde. "Liar, you were crying." Hinata used her thumbs to wipe away the tears from his eyes. "See, all better," Hinata said, giggling. Naruto said nothing. He simply continued to stare down at the smiling brunette before him as his own cheeks turned red. Her hair was slightly messy from the snow and the hug the two shared moments before, but it somehow complemented her. The cold had also caused her cheeks to have this alluring rosy glow to them, and along with that beautiful smile she was wearing. Her eyes relaxed and her teeth peeking out from under her lips, Naruto's insides were melting. He couldn't tell if the temperature was starting to affect his mind or he was going crazy, but an overpowering urge to kiss those perfect lips of hers washed over him. Hinata's eyebrows crinkled in concern. "Naruto-kun, what's wrong? You look like a tomato. Maybe we should go back inside," she said, pressing a hand against his forehead. Naruto jumped backwards in response to the contact and fell on the ground into the snow. Hinata quickly rushed to his side. "Oh my god, are you okay?" she said, hovering over him. Naruto sat up and scratched the back of his neck. Yeah, must have lost my footing or something." Hinata laughed and extended her hand. "Here, let me help you, Mr. Clumsy." Naruto gently took her hand and his heart began racing. "There's that feeling again," he thought. "Well, I guess it's time for us to part ways. I'll let you get back to work," Naruto said once back on his feet. "Huh? Really, you sure you don't want to come back inside and warm up a bit? Hinata questioned. I can make you another cup of coffee. Naruto shook his head. Nah, I got other plans, don't miss me too much, okay? Hinata scoffed and rolled her eyes. I'm dying already, she said sarcastically. Naruto smiled his foxy grin and waved. Hinata waved back and began opening the door. Oh, and Naruto-kun. Naruto turned towards her. Yeah. Quote. Hinata smiled. I missed you too. She then closed the door behind her before he could respond. Naruto was once again speechless. He could do nothing but stare at the spot where she once stood. How was it possible that just a few words could touch his soul so much? No, how was it possible that one girl could change his whole entire being? Naruto began jogging to his car and once inside quickly started the engine. He was still heavily confused. There was so many questions running through his mind and he knew only one other person who could help him. He sped out of his parking spot and down the road towards a place where he hoped to find some answers. Hinata watched him through the window of the cafe until he was out of sight. A smile adored her face even as the manager hounded her for her extra long break. She happily went on her merry way cleaning the floors, letting nothing kill her good mood. Because she was finally at peace with Naruto and for the first time ever, there was no yearning for him. Naruto pounded on the door. Come on, open up, I know you're in there. Suddenly the door swung open and slammed against the wall next to it. What the hell do you want, Naruto? I should rip your arms off for banging on my door like that. A very pissed Sakura Haruno stood in the doorway of her apartment building, fuming. Naruto, however, ignored her and walked past her into the room. Wait a Seiko. I need to ask you something, Naruto said, cutting her off and taking a seat in one of her chairs. Naruto, you need to leave, can't this wait till later? I'm B. Did you lie to me when you said you didn't know why Hinata had left all those years ago? He questioned, leaving Sakura speechless. Sakura avoided Naruto's gaze. Where is this coming from? What's going on? Sasuke Uchiha emerged from what appeared to be the kitchen with no expression. Sakura cursed under her breath. Didn't I tell you to stay put? Sasuke shrugged his shoulders. Tem's here too, Naruto said, shocked, looking between the two. Naruto, it's not what it looks like, Sakura said, trying to defuse the situation. Naruto cringed and held up a hand. Look, it doesn't matter at this point. Do you or do you not know why Hinata left all those years ago? Quote. Yes, Sasuke answered for her. Sakura shot him a look that said, what are you doing, as he took a seat adjacent to Naruto. We both do actually. So enough of the lies, I'll tell you exactly what you need to know. Quote. ChatGPT image July 4, 2026, 09_09_49 p.m.png. 2355K view, scan and download.